name is Armin Fernandez, and I want to thank you all for attending this morning's public memorial service for Police Chief David Provencher. In particular, I want to thank the family of David Provencher, the members of the New Bedford Police Department, the host of this morning's program, Mayor John Mitchell, and the many elected officials in attendance, including representatives from the Rhode Island State Police, representatives of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Office, representatives of the Office of the Attorney General of Massachusetts, former Mayor Rosemary Tierney, former Mayor Scott Lang, who will speak, Mayor John Mitchell, City Council President Brian Gomes, City Council Member Joseph Lopes, City Council Member Kerry Winterson, City Council-elect Ian Abreu, and School Committeeman Joseph Amaral. This morning is an opportunity for the residents of New Bedford to mourn the loss of Chief Provencher and honor his dedicated service to our city. Before we begin, I wish to add that David Provencher was a dear friend and a colleague, and I'm honored to have been asked to assist in this morning's service. So let us begin. I'll ask that you please rise for the presenting of our nation's colors by the New Bedford Police Department Honor Guard and the New Bedford Fire Department Color Guard. Gentlemen, please come forward. I'd ask that you please remain standing until we conclude with our national anthem, but we're going to begin with our invocation to be delivered by the Executive Minister of the Greater New Bedford Interchurch Council and Police Department Chaplain, Reverend David Lehman. Reverend Lehman.
Good morning. My greetings to the family, friends, community leaders, and community at large. I consider it an honor to be here to be a part of this ceremony for my friend and our police chief, David Provencher. If you'd bow your heads. Lord, as we gather here this morning to mourn the loss of our friend, our chief of police, David Provencher, we'd ask that your presence would fill this house. We'd ask, Lord, that you would help us through our time of mourning, and help us also to remember those times that we were with him, where he made us laugh, where he also made us feel safe, where he was tough when he needed to be, when we were also kind and gentle. Lord, as we gather here together as a community and as family, let us strengthen one another, and let your presence fill this place and give us the peace that we need at this time. This is my prayer, in the name of Jesus, amen.
Thank you, Reverend Lehman. I now call upon City Council President Brian Gomes, who also serves on the chair of the Committee on Public Safety for the city, to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. Councilor Gomes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I now would ask a famous vocalist from New Bedford, Candida Rose, to come forward and sing our national anthem. Candida.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bomb bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Order. On.
Thank you, Candida. Sergeant, please post the colors.
Honor guard. Post. Post. Present. On. Order. On. Ready. Hey. Forward. On.
Thank you again to the New Bedford Police Department Honor Guard and the New Bedford Fire Department Color Guard for their efforts thus far. You may be seated. Dave Provencher dedicated his life to the New Bedford Police Department and the people of the City of New Bedford. In the course of a 35-year career as a New Bedford police officer, David held nearly every position in the department. He began as a beat cop. He came to master the craft of policing and took on increasingly important leadership roles within the department. In April of 2011, David took on the responsibility of serving as chief and was recognized as one of the most capable and respected chiefs of police anywhere in the nation. Having served for most of his time as chief under Mayor John Mitchell, I would like to begin our speaking program by inviting Mayor Mitchell to reflect on Chief Provencher's service for the past 4 years in his administration, as well as the Chief's contributions to our community over the course of his long career. Mayor Mitchell.
Matt and Jeff, and Dave Provencher's entire family, distinguished guests, members of the New Bedford Police Department, and residents of our city. Over the last week, in the outpouring of grief over Dave's sudden passing, we've heard a chorus of praise of his leadership, his compassion, his intelligence, and his professionalism. and that is what one would expect under the circumstances. But it has the added virtue of being entirely true. This son of the South End was all of that and much more. On this occasion, it is necessary and appropriate for me to make the record forever clear. Having worked side by side with Dave Provencher for 4 years through every major public safety challenge along the way, and as someone who spent an earlier career working with law enforcement at every level of government, I can state unequivocally that Dave Provencher was an outstanding police chief. Keeping the peace is the primary obligation of government, and it entails much more than simply finding the bad guys and slapping the cuffs on them. The job of the urban police chief has become increasingly complex and ever demanding. And as we have seen in far too many places of late, from small cities like Ferguson to major metros like Chicago, police departments are coming under siege for what are, in effect, failures in leadership. The story here in New Bedford has been very different. Under Chief Provencher's guiding hand, the city has cut against the grain of national trends. Gun violence is going up in most places. It's going down here. The department consistently solves major offenses and it reliably gets dangerous people off of our streets. At the same time, again, unlike so many other American cities these days with demographic challenges just like ours, there isn't a single neighborhood here where police are met with hostility, and that is remarkable. New Bedford's police department commands the respect of our residents because the department recognizes that respect is a two-way street. The containment of gun violence and the respect with which the department is held in the community is no accident. It could not have happened without Dave's leadership. Only a month ago, we discussed his approach to policing and how it differed from that in other places. He said to me that the problem in many cities is that police see themselves as warriors pitted against criminals, a mindset that inevitably leads to community resentment and even to abusive force. In contrast, Dave instilled the idea that our officers are guardians of the community, meaning that their job is, in the old-fashioned sense, to protect and to serve the public. That is community policing in its most basic form, and it has worked. What Dave did not say in that conversation, and what he would never say, was what made that approach work so well had everything to do with who he was as a person. Dave thought strategically and understood very clearly the role of every job in the department. He had a command of how the place should run. But strategies and plans don't implement themselves. Anyone who observed the ceremonies this past week could not help but say there was a police chief who had the respect and admiration of his officers. Like every great leader, Dave set the right tone. He recognized that in a large police department it was critical to maintain discipline, and that may be the most difficult part of the job. He had the strength to accept that it was lonely at the top, especially in the police department, but he put the needs of the department first and made tough decisions about internal discipline, even when it meant the end of a career of a long colleague. But being a tough disciplinarian alone hardly explains the quality of his leadership. He understood that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Dave was a great leader because of the quality and depth of his emotional connections to people. His ability to make people laugh helped him here very much so. We're all familiar with that. His humor was quick and dry, and sometimes silly, and often, or I should say usually, irreverent. But he was often the butt of his own jokes because as seriously as he took his job, he didn't take himself that seriously. His humor often came in the form of a text message, and let's face it, the guy texted like a teenager. You see that picture of him right up there. We've seen that pose before. He's ready at the smartphone to respond to a text. That's the way he was, and he did it prodigiously. And a lot of his texts, included many funny ones. Like a couple of years ago when he texted me, hey, I just want to give you the heads up that there's a fire at Burger King in the South End. I said, Burger King, really? And he said, yeah, it looks like they let that flame broil thing get a little too far. Sometimes I was on the receiving end of the joke. A couple of summers ago, the city helped put on a 3-on-3 basketball tournament in the downtown, in the middle of the downtown. Some of you may have remembered that. The next day, there was a picture of me in the paper taking a jump shot. That was quickly followed up by a text from Dave that said, "That's some vertical leap you have there. You could just about fit a slice of pizza under your feet." With his friends, he could let a little air out of your ego, but he would never put people down. And that is because he genuinely cared for other people. He deeply loved his family and was so proud of the men that Matt and Jeff had become. His family was front and center in his life. But he extended himself to a far broader circle. I heard so many stories this week from people who, in a time of need or sorrow, received a phone call out of the blue from Dave Provencher asking, "How are you doing?" Or assuring them, "You're going to get through this." I've received those phone calls myself from him. His compassion made him a better police chief. He had his opinions and didn't always suffer fools patiently, but he listened to people, whether they were police officers or everyday citizens who brought their complaints or their aspirations to him. He had the humility to know that he didn't have all the answers. And a man about whom there was so much to admire, Dave's drive and determination to me was especially striking. Dave had a motor. He was constantly striving, not for self-aggrandizement, as Father Hamill noted yesterday, and not for glory. As adept and as deft as he was with public relations, he never sought the limelight for its own sake. He strived for all the right reasons, to make himself a better man, to make himself a better chief, to make New Bedford a stronger community. Dave could have wallowed in self-pity on account of his own condition. He could have felt sorry for himself. He could have gone out on disability and retired a long time ago. And after what he went through and the burdens that he continued to live with, no one would have begrudged him. No one would have thought any less of him. Yet he did quite the opposite. This summer, he signed up to a new contract. He chose to stay in the arena. He told me that he was in it for the long run so that the department could become the very best. For him, it was all about making New Bedford a better place. It was all about serving others. He was an exceptionally talented and driven person who, through adversity, had grown a fuller, more generous spirit. I will miss my friend. He made me a better mayor. He made New Bedford a stronger and safer community. And through his example, which we unexpectedly have been forced to reflect upon this week, he made all of us around him more complete people. In this way, Dave Provencher exceeded his own lofty goals for himself. It is his lasting service to us all. Let us today resolve to hold his example closely in order to honor his legacy, to find fulfillment in our own lives, and to strengthen the bonds among us. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Mayor Mitchell, for those kind words and for the truth about David Provencher, and especially for hosting this program that we're here now undertaking. Dave Provencher was a natural leader, as we've heard. He commanded the respect and the loyalty of those around him. But every great leader knows that he has to assemble a great team to succeed. It is a tribute to David's leadership that the New Bedford Police Department is today commanded by a team of experienced professionals. No member of that leadership team, however, was relied upon more by David Provencher than his colleague and friend, Deputy Chief Dave Lazard. I'd like to invite the deputy to the podium to share a few words about the man he grew to know well in the course of their careers in the department. Deputy Chief Lazard.
Good morning. I thought I'd start out by telling everyone how I first came to work with the chief. And it was going back in 1994, 95. I just recently made sergeant. He made captain shortly before, and he was in charge of the department's professional standards division, in other words, known as the internal affairs. And we worked together for nearly 2 years on a lot of major cases. We became close. After leaving there, we kind of went our separate ways for the next 15 years or so. He was always involved with the administrative end, and I went off into work into detectives and narcotics and what have you. So come about 15 years later, Chief Teachman retired in 2011, and shortly after the word spread to the department that he was going to leave, I had received a call from the chief, the deputy at the time. And he inquired with me if I was interested in applying. I told him I wasn't sure. It was a big step for me. I had just made captain. I was in patrol at Station 3. So I would get back to him. So from there, I discussed it with my wife and actually made a list of pros and cons, to be honest. And the list of cons was much longer than the list of pros, to be quite honest with you. But he got back to me and he felt that we would be a perfect match with his administrative experience and my experience working in investigative units. That was something he always felt he didn't have the experience, and it would be a big help to him. So obviously I made the choice to put my name in, and we were both sworn in as chief and deputy chief in April of 2011. Right from the beginning, my first couple of months on the job, I realized that this was way more than I had anticipated. There was so much going on. The challenges were great. But with the chief, he had this ability to just slow everything down. You know, we would meet for coffee every morning and discuss the issues from the previous evening and what was going on for the day. And he would always refer to the job of being chief as juggling. You know, we would have all these balls up in the air, if you will. You know, crime issues here, personnel, budget, all these things up in the air. And to him, that was like juggling. And when we were having such a bad day, I feel like I couldn't keep these balls up in the air. I don't know what those balls were made of, but something white was scrubbing off on my head, because right now, nothing like my hair was before I started this job. But that was the chief. You know, you often hear the sportscasters, you know, the elite quarterbacks in the league, they have the ability to slow things down. That's what the chief could do. No matter what was on the plate for the day, he would sit down and he would just break it all down, slow everything down for me, you know, deal with this first. And he had an knack for that I don't know if we'll ever be able to replace. He spent over 2/3 of his 35-year career either in the chief's office or in administrative service, close with the chief's office. It's really unheard of. I don't know how we'll ever be able to replace Chief Provencher, but we'll do our best. He was a good friend. We spoke daily for the past 5 years, either in person or text. The department and the community are very fortunate to have him for the past 35 years. He will be dearly missed, but certainly not forgotten. Thank you.
there's an expression, you really don't know anyone unless you live with them. And the two Davids, the chief and the deputy, I first met when I was a legal advisor for the department, and they were in the internal affairs department. And that's the toughest. Keep in mind that you're working with about 200 men, and if there's an investigation, we always wanted somebody who was what? Thorough, smart, fair, not only to the system, to the citizens, but also to the officers who were involved. And I always felt comfortable, and the then chief, the appellate or whomever it was, that with the two Davids in hand, that justice was served. So I want to thank the deputy for his comments, because I know he was a good friend. And I can tell you from speaking with the chief, he always relied on the deputy. Now, Mayor Mitchell had the good fortune to take office with David Provencher already at the helm of the police department. Of course, Mayor Mitchell also had the wisdom and experience in his law enforcement to recognize David's value and retain him as chief. But it fell to the mayor's predecessor, Mayor Scott Lang, to have the opportunity to appoint David Provencher to the post of police chief. I would now like to welcome Mayor Lang to say a few words about the person who I am certain he considers his finest appointment. Mayor Lang.
I want to thank the mayor for asking me to share a few thoughts about Chief Provencher. I appreciate that. I want to say to the Provencher family and to all his loved ones that you have all of our deepest sympathy. And I know that over the past week, the City of New Bedford has mourned the loss of Police Chief Provencher. And now, today, we're able to begin to celebrate his life. And now in the future, we'll celebrate a great deal about it. Chief Provencher was a person who will long be remembered. He loved his city and the people who lived in it. If you were from New Bedford, you started with a leg up. He dedicated his life to making the city a better place to live for every family, and he did so in a unique way. He was a people person. He believed he was the same as everyone else. He believed we're all flesh and blood, and we all have strengths and frailties. The chief believed in the goodness of every person, and that says a lot about an individual, especially one who was involved in law enforcement for his entire adult life. He was a great listener, and he had an open mind, and he continued to grow as a human being each and every day. He was well learned and an avid reader. He loved history, politics, and all sports. He believed in the concept of a lawful society, and he believed in the Constitution. He was an enlightened public servant who was educated in New Bedford, started at the street level, rose to the highest rank, and never lost his roots within the neighborhoods. In all the time I worked with him and in my personal relationship with him, he had a core decency that was rivaled by a few. He understood the governmental process. His relationships with many of our city leaders went back decades. He forged these friendships in school, on the ball fields, and at his father's barbershop. When he told you he would talk to Brian Gomes about an important public safety issue, he went to speak to a lifelong friend. He cultivated such personal relationships throughout his life. And we all knew, regardless of any encounter with him, if you disagreed with the chief or he disagreed with you, the next day began anew. He was a strong leader at the New Bedford Police Department because he believed in every single man and woman who served as a sworn officer, and he believed in the great staff that supports the department. He proudly served as chief of the department, but was more proud to stand each day with his fellow officers. He trusted his officers, the men and women who dedicate their lives to serve the city. He knew that the New Bedford Police Department has leadership and talent throughout its ranks to meet any challenge. He believed in the integrity of the New Bedford Police Department. He believed in a keen concept where every member of the department was asked to contribute in a positive way. He understood that serving as an urban police officer is the most difficult job in America. He believed that the 21st century model for policing required each officer to become a member of the neighborhoods that they protect. Chief Provencher believed that community relations and public communication was the key to crime prevention and solving crimes. He converted that energy That he derived from serving as the chief of our city into partnerships and coalitions with neighborhood organizations and the diverse communities throughout our city. The chief had tremendous empathy and understanding for the problems and challenges of our citizens and families and what they face on a day-to-day basis. And he had no doubt that the police department can improve the quality of life of all of our residents. He believed that serve and protect was more than a motto, and he placed the emphasis on community service. He also knew firsthand the difficulties of the job and the stresses that are placed on our officers and their families, and he always tried to address that and help in any way he could. In reflection, the quality I admire most about the chief was ability to weigh facts in any given circumstance and arrive at measured, appropriate action plans or solutions to the smallest or the biggest problems that his personnel or the city faced. He did this in his personal life and also on the job. If I stop here, it would be a fitting tribute to the chief, but it wouldn't be a complete picture. The chief had a personality that stole the show. He was a supporting cast member who always got the best reviews. He was truly genuine, and that quality always won the day. The chief had a quick wit, which on many occasions had a slow bite. Never, however, was his humor mean-spirited. His observations, in fact, on life and situations that he encountered were often summarized in a humorous and positive manner. His humor was an acquired taste, dry as a pillow full of feathers, and he often made himself the point of understated, self-deprecating humor. As I previously stated, as a human being, he grew every day. He was kind, compassionate, and he had an outlook on life that was fashioned by his and his family's love and his family's and his own health challenges. The chief appreciated every day. In fact, it's fair to say that he never had anything but a positive attitude, and he never shied away from living life to its fullest. He loved his family, his father Lucian, his mother Alice, his brother Lucian, his late sister Valerie, his niece Allison, his nephew Lucas, and their families were the gleam in his eye each day, and his own family inspired him each day. He and Mary brought up two fine young men, Matt, who graduated from law school in June and was recently admitted to the Mass and Rhode Island bars, and Jeff, a young man who will follow in his father's footsteps in law enforcement. And Jeff just recently announced his engagement to Kaylee Cotter. I know the chief was very excited about their engagement and looking forward to Jeff and Kylie's wedding next summer. And not far in the distance, he had hoped that Matt and Liz McNamara would be following suit as well. The chief loved his sons. Later in his life, we know the chief was devoted to Michelle and became a father figure to her children, Michaela, Tyler, and Ben. There is no doubt that the chief was truly committed to and loved all of the children in his life. He took an active interest in their lives and a very active interest in their lives each day, all of them. And he was always available to them. And he was not reluctant to share his common sense or lifelong wisdom with his loved ones or friends. Over the past several days and nights, I've been thinking a lot about Dave Provencher, the chief and the person, and his place in New Bedford. We have all lost family members or people who are close to us. And each of us have felt the searing sadness and pain that accompanies such losses. A sudden loss like this is one that leaves far more questions than answers as we try to reconcile the person's death versus the future that we had anticipated for them. In the chief's case, his future was so bright, both personally and professionally. Personally, many of life's joys were right in front of him. He was about to start new chapters. He was a fine man and a great friend. He was uniquely original, and we were all better persons to have known him. We will all miss him greatly as a person. Professionally, our city took his presence and his future service for granted. He had a steady hand and excellent judgment. He forged alliances and built coalitions with every community in our city. He had the respect of his colleagues, as well as the people he served. New Bedford is a better community as a result of his service. As a city, we're going to miss him, and only hope is he would, for the best for our police department and the city of New Bedford. Please keep the chief's spirit alive with your positive thoughts about him on a daily basis. And please keep his loved ones in your thoughts and prayers.
Thank you, Mayor Scott Lang. You know, I was just thinking that the last time I spoke with David, and this happened often, if there was something in a newspaper or he had accomplished something, I'd say, "Congratulations, Chief." And he'd say something, "You taught me well, Armin, you taught me well." But that was typical. He would deflect his own achievement by trying to credit you. And yesterday, for those of you who had the ability or the time and were in attendance at the funeral, this was something that Father Hamill talked about, his humility. Now we've heard tributes from those who counted the chief as his friend and colleague. He endeared himself to countless people. He was a beloved person. But no one held David closer to their hearts than his family. We are honored this morning that his son Matthew has agreed to share a few words about his father, Matthew Provencher.
Good morning, everyone. I can't tell you how much it means to me and everyone else in my father's family to see you here being with us. My father would frequently tell me throughout many of my personal and professional difficulties, coming through law school and studying for the bar exam, and trying to figure out if they're ever going to let me make a living in this life. He would tell me, "You always need to hold on, because once you sleep on it, it'll be better in the morning." I can tell you, the past week has been a lot of difficult nights, but every morning it has in fact been better. This morning especially. I can't tell you what a testament it is to my father's memory that you're all here, taking time out of your lives in the holiday season to spend it with us, to spend it commemorating my father, and thinking about him, and the work that he did, and the impact he had on us, his family, upon his family, the city, and upon his family in the police department. It is an enormous honor that you are present here with us today. And I cannot help but say that I feel very strongly that every one of you is a part of his family in the same way that those of us who are related to him by flesh and blood, those of us who are related to him by the love that they shared. I cannot adequately express what it was like to be with my father over the course of his life. He was a constant force, encouraging me to improve myself, to learn, and to grow. I know now, especially, that he wasn't a force in that sense simply just for me. I think it's clear that he was a force in that sense for everyone he knew. I believe more than ever that we will not miss my father. Instead, we have in this room and throughout the city people who will continue to carry on his memory and create a legacy that will sustain his life long after we leave here today. It is clear to me that the effect that my father had will not be measured solely in myself, in my brother, in Michelle, her children, Michaela, Ben, and Tyler. There is far more of an effect that he will have upon everyone in the city. I hope that we can remember him as an instructor, as an educator, and a leader, and not just as a police chief. He blurred these roles together because I do not think that he saw himself as a man limited by his position or his job description. I can tell you that the past few days have been hard. They've been extremely difficult for my family and I. Every day we wake up to the realization that my father is no longer with us. But we also wake up to the realization that my father is still with us. He is clearly still here with us and with all of you, because every single one of you carries his memory forward in your hearts and in your actions and in what you do to make New Bedford the best place that it can be to live, for ourselves and for each other. I cannot tell you what a fitting tribute that is. I thank you so much for your attendance. I thank you for your sympathy and your condolences. And I thank you all for your continued efforts to be the best individuals, the best husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, and citizens that we can all hope to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. And that is the key, isn't it? We carry in that diary that we all have, a memory, and as I often say when I reference my own deaths in family or close friends, that's how we beat death. We never forget. We remember. We remember. And there's certainly a lot to remember about Dave Provencher. I was in the, by the way, this is not in the script, but it's the truth. I was at the funeral home. In line next to me was a police officer who was retired. And I just asked him, I said, Ken, tell me what do you remember about the chief? And he said, he was book smart, but that's not enough. He said, when I'm at the intersection of Tallman Street and North Front, I need someone who have taught me how to take that law and how to apply it. And he said, Dave Provencher could do that. Smart, but know how to use it. And think about it, and I've said this before, how many vocations, how many professions do you know where you raise your right hand and swear to uphold the constitutions of the United States and of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and they give you a gun to do it? And then, some dark alley, in a matter of minutes, a matter of seconds, you have to react. Life and property is what your oath is to protect. And you make a decision. And take some of my colleagues on the bench, a couple of years later, 5-4, 4-3, to decide that you were right or that you were wrong. And the person who feels the heat, who gets the blame if that decision made on that alley was somehow found to be an error, is the chief. But you can rest assured that that was a burden that Dave Provencher always accepted. He always accepted. So, as Matthew has said, we should keep him in our memory. And I want to thank Matthew and on behalf of all of us here, and by the way, many could be here to speak, but those who were in attendance at the funeral or went to the Mass and lined the streets, the citizens of New Bedford have spoken loudly. They've spoken loudly. So I want you and your family to know that we're grateful for the contributions your father made to our community over a lifetime of service. He protected the innocent. He stood tall in face of dangers. He showed compassion when it was needed. His wry humor made tough times easy to bear. In sum, he enriched all of us, our lives, and made New Bedford a better place for us all. For that, we will hold them dearly in our memory. Thank you, Dave Provencher. I'll now ask everyone to please stand as Reverend Leamer offers our closing prayer. And I would ask that you continue to stand until we retire our colors. Reverend Leamer.
If I can take just 1 minute before I pray to echo what has been said so much. As the chaplain, unofficial, official, however you want to look at it, I've worked with the chief for a lot of years. We started the chaplaincy program with a whole team at a time when there were a lot of unsolved murders going on, and they wanted to make a better connection in the community. And there were times we worked real well together, especially as we were getting started, and I'll never forget, and it told me something about the character of the man. We got into a very heated disagreement. People call them high level. We were shouting at one another. There was a very difficult thing that we had disagreed upon, and I thought, well, that's it. That's going to end my capability of working with him. But as I stated earlier, the next day, he called me because there was something we needed to do together. And we got past that issue, and we understood the things that we needed to do. And there were many times that I was called upon to just have a conversation, have a cup of coffee. There were things that I would talk to him about that I knew from the community. But the one thing with him was always the same. He didn't think he had every answer, but he was not afraid to make decisions. His biggest thing was that we would work together, and that law enforcement was here to serve, not just to come down on people and enforce. And he would rather intervene, he would rather assist than arrest. But he would do that too. I do want to, again, offer the sincerest hopes and prayers for the family as they go through these next days, months, and years without their friend, their father, their brother, to Michelle, to the kids, Matt and Jeff, but also to the men and women in blue of this city. I want to commend you for the work that you do in coming out to support your chief and their family, and the work that you do every day that reflects upon your leadership, Dave having been that leadership for you. I'd like to offer up this poem before I close in prayer that I got from a memorial for law enforcement. The policeman stood and faced his God, which always must come to pass. He hoped his shoes were shining just as brightly as his brass. Step forward now, policeman, how shall I deal with you? Have you always turned the other cheek? To my church have you been true? The policeman squared his shoulders and said, no, Lord, I guess I ain't. Because those of us who carry a badge can't always be a saint. I've had to work most Sundays, and at times my talk was rough. And sometimes I've been violent because the streets are awful tough. But I never took a penny that wasn't mine to keep, though I've worked a lot of overtime when the bills got too steep. And I never passed a cry for help, though at times I shook with fear. And sometimes, God forgive me, I've wept unmanly tears. I know I don't deserve a place among the people here. They didn't always want me around except to calm their fear. If you've a place for me here, Lord, it needn't be so grand. I never expected or had too much, but if you don't, I'll understand. There was a silence all around the throne where the saints had often trod, as the policeman waited quietly for the judgment of his God. Step forward now, policeman. You've borne your burdens well. Come walk a beat on heaven's streets. You've done your time in hell. David would not have called this place hell, and that's the one thing of this poem that I don't agree with, because David loved this city and loved its people. You were brave and strong. You served your community with pride and professionalism. You made a choice to stand in the face of danger so that we could be safe. You made a difference. Thank you, Chief Dave Provencher. Your service, your sacrifice will always be remembered. You will be remembered always. Bow your heads. As we leave here today, I ask your blessings upon the people of this city, upon the family and friends, upon the police officers of the Bedford Police Department, upon its leadership from the mayor through the council, every department head, everyone who's been affected. Lord, I ask for your peace, your wisdom, your strength as we go through these days. Let us carry the memory of Chief Provencher, not just in remembering what he was to us, but to remember what he taught us. Continue to help us through these days. This I pray in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you again, Reverend Lima. We will now retire our nation's colors. I'd ask that the New Bedford Police Department Honor Guard and the New Bedford Fire Department Color Guard come forward. ladies and gentlemen, guests, thank you for coming. That concludes our program. Thank you very, very much.